So, now this is something I was not planning on making a video about, but now I'm just waist deep in the sauce and I cannot turn back. Some of you may already know it. It's been talked about to death since it happened, but I'm talking about the OceanGate submersible that went missing. Now, there's been some things that come up since it went missing, and I just want to talk about that really quick before I start getting into the fact that it was found. Now, to kick things off, we got an interview from a guy who's actually been inside the sub before it was launched for its official tour. And a few things that came up in this interview that kind of set everything off and really sets the motion into how the sub going missing was a pretty much for sure thing. Take a look at this clip.
It's also the only one with a toilet.
That's not a toilet. That's something they give you at the hospital if you're too sick to get up on your own to use the actual bathroom. You're telling me this is what people had to use for 8 hours under the sea?
Sort of. And yet I couldn't help noticing how many pieces of this sub seemed improvised.
Yeah, I'd say improvised. They were so cheap they had to get tape and Sharpie to write down the controls on this thing.
We can use these off-the-shelf components. I got these.
Here we finally get a sneak peek of what's on the inside of the Titan, and it looks miserable. It looks like I would die in a tin can if I got stuck in this thing. But thank God I am too poor and too smart to get in this.
From Camper World, we run the whole thing with this game controller.
Hey, wait a sec. So you're telling me this is the controller they used to man the submarine? An off-brand Xbox controller. I mean, look here. Works with Windows XP, Visa, Windows 7, Windows 8. Says nothing about it working on a submarine. It's probably why they lost communications with the submarine. Probably because the Logitech controller disconnected halfway through. It said, "Alright, boss, I'm done." You can hear my fiance right before I cut out the video, but she said I bet it was the Wi-Fi's fault. And you know what? I don't doubt it. Probably was. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if that submarine was running on Spectrum Wi-Fi. If its entire connectivity from the support ship it was from to the submarine itself was just Spectrum.
It seems like this submersible has some elements of MacGyver-y jerry-rigness. I mean, you're putting construction pipes as ballast.
I don't blame that guy. If MacGyver had a submarine of his own, this would be that sub.
I don't know if I'd use that description of it, but there's certain things that you want to be buttoned down. So the pressure vessel is not MacGyver at all, because that's where we work with Boeing and NASA and the University of Washington. Everything else can fail. Your thrusters can go, your lights can go, you're still going to be safe.
Well, I bet you're really needing those words now, huh? What if your oxygen fails? What if your pressure chamber fails? You know what? What if the whole submarine just fails? You know, we'll get more onto that in a sec. Yeah, it's some crazy stuff. Now, there's a lot of things this guy says, and I'm going to go ahead and show off a phone interview on what he thinks about experience when it comes to manning a submarine.
When I started the business, one of the things you'll find, there are other sub operators out there, but they typically have gentlemen who are ex-military submariners, and you'll see a whole bunch of 50-year-old white guys. I wanted our team to be younger, to be inspirational, and I'm not going to inspire a 16-year-old to go pursue marine technology.
Good God, dude. I would rather a 50-year-old manning this thing than some 20 or 16-year-old who doesn't even have this single idea of how to operate a submarine. Do you even understand how to operate a submarine? I mean, this is crazy stuff. Give me the experienced person. I want to live if I'm going that deep under the sea. Now, granted, I would have no clue on how to man a submarine. I've only ever been in a submarine once in my life, and it was on shore in a museum far from the coast. Completely inoperable, outside of the fact that it can have its lights on.
And we can train people to do that. We can train someone to pilot the sub. We use a game controller, so anybody can drive the sub.
He says that like using an off-brand $20 Xbox controller for a submarine is something to be proud of. It's not. And I'd rather not just anybody controlling the submarine. I would rather somebody who has been operating a submarine for years on years and years, whether that guy was from the Navy or whatever, to be operating this thing. It's ludicrous. Well, anyways, that's about everything that was wrong with the situation, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it wrong because it's blatantly obvious on what could happen when you have something so cheaply put together. I swear I could find the submarine at Dollar Tree. But now that I'm done picking it apart, I want to get to the next point, and that the submarine has in fact been found in pieces. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Feast your eyes. Debris from the OceanGate sub found 1,600 feet from the Titanic after catastrophic implosion, U.S. Coast Guard says. So what I'm getting from that is that the submarine could not handle the pressure of the deep sea. 5 people who were on the sub that went missing during the voyage to the wreckage of the Titanic did not survive. The company that planned the trip said Thursday, as the U.S. Coast Guard said, the OceanGate vessel experienced a catastrophic loss in the pressure chamber and confirmed that the debris found on the ocean floor were the pieces of the submarine. So if I'm getting this correctly, I was probably right in my first assumption that it crumbled because of the sea pressure. It just could not handle it. They said that the sub can handle over 13,000 feet under the sea, and the Titanic is 12,000 feet. It just could not handle it. If I was CEO, I probably would have double checked, triple checked. I would have checked that thing 5 different times to make sure it was fine. But now, you was just like, too many safety regulations. Anybody can man this thing. Anybody can get trained to man it. Well, clearly not, my friend. Another one. Meanwhile, banging noises that were detected during the week were assessed to have been the noise from other ships in the area, Martin reported. Meaning the banging they heard earlier was not of the surviving people, and there was never any hope to begin with, because the OceanGate submarine had probably already crumbled from the sea pressure, which is depressing. Thursday morning, this morning, an ROV from a Canadian vessel found the tail cone of the sub about 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic. That's depressing. Oh, and here's another thing. He said more debris was found, and authorities consulted with the experts who determined that the debris found over 2 miles beneath the water's surface was consistent with the sub. I mean, it's probably imploded somewhere in like the middle part of the ocean. And then just completely sank all the way to the bottom. Here's the 5 passengers that were on board, including the CEO. Pretty ironic after he said that you're safe no matter what could go wrong. Well, what if you lost the entire submarine? Which happened. Essentially, we found 5 different major pieces of debris that told us that this was the remains of the Titan. The initial thing we found was the nose cone, he said. We found a large debris field, followed by a second smaller debris field. This scene, I honestly have no words to say. It's depressing. It's a shame that this happened, but honestly, it was bound to happen with all the regulations going on. Bro was cutting corners. It's a real shame this all happened. I mean, it's not a joke. I know I was picking the CEO apart and the company apart earlier with all those videos, but it's a shame that this happened. When you cut corners just for the sake of cost or whatever your reason is, like, a tragedy is bound to happen, especially when you're going to such dangerous depths. But honestly, my heart goes out to all the families who lost these people. It's awful, especially to go in such an awful way too. Like, I can't imagine what kind of pain they were in. But that's it for this video. May God be with the families of these people, and stay saucy, y'all.